Before I start, let me just share for a moment that this was going to be an emotional High Holy Days for me to begin with. But what happened last night, seeing all of you here, being upstairs just moments ago and walking through all of the services we have running concurrently here at Beth Yeshurun, seeing the hundreds and hundreds of people on the way upstairs, so many, members of all ages, some new members, some who've been here as long as I've been around, alive. This is an inspiring place to be, not only a rabbi, but a member. And I'm so grateful for the kind words that were said last night, and so appreciative of all the things that are being done in celebration of my retirement. I'm celebrating it as well. So let's begin. You know, it's a scary world out there, very scary. A man is driving on the highway. His wife calls him on his cell phone, and in a worried voice, she says to him, "Herman, be careful. I just heard on the radio that there is a lunatic driving the wrong way on Interstate 10. And Herman says, "I know, but there isn't just one, there are hundreds." True story. A boy asks his father, "Daddy, are bugs good to eat?" "That's a disgusting thing to ask, son. Don't talk about those things over dinner." And after dinner, the father asks the son, "Come on, why are you asking me about eating bugs?" And the boy says, "Oh, it's nothing. There was a bug in your soup, but it's gone now." What are these? True stories. What do these two tales have in common? The people in both of them woke up that day feeling great. Herman kissed his wife goodbye and set out on a nice drive on Interstate 10. The man in the last story, he sat down expecting yet another delicious meal prepared by his very talented and loving wife. But then out of the blue, the old axiom came true. Bad things can happen to good people. What is it about life that we seem to encounter conflict and strife wherever we go? We wake up happy, ready to face the world, the new day, upbeat, big smiles on our faces, kiss our spouses, our partners, our lovers goodbye, and then for no reason, no fault of our own at all, things start to happen. What is it about life? The answer is very simple, my friends. That is life. Life is about the unexpected. Conflict and stress come with living. It's the way the world is. The better question is, how can we manage all the conflicts that come into our lives so that we can still be happy, still be able to enjoy each day, though no day finishes as perfectly as we intended when it started? It's an important question because life throws us curveballs. And even though we have years of experience in living, we still seem surprised and get annoyed when those curveballs hit us. Today, I want to talk about conflict and how to manage it so that it can keep us from being consumed by it and our lives ruined by it. Take relationships, for example. When we get married and are so in love, we never argue because the people we love are so wonderful and we're oblivious to their flaws. But with time, familiarity can breed contempt, and our partner's little flaws can become all that we see. We find ourselves endlessly engaged in conflict. Not long ago, in a much smaller setting, I told the story about the husband and wife who decide, after 30 years, to go for counseling. When asked what the problem is, the wife goes into a tirade listing every problem they had ever had in the years they'd been married. On and on she goes. Neglect, lack of intimacy, emptiness, loneliness, feeling unloved and unlovable, an entire laundry list of unmet needs that she has endured. And finally, after allowing this for a sufficient length of time, the therapist gets up, walks around the desk, and after asking the wife to stand, he embraces and kisses her long and passionately as her husband watches with a raised eyebrow. The woman is absolutely transformed. Dazed, she sits down. The therapist turns to the husband and he says, "This is what your wife needs at least 3 times a week. Can you do this?" "Well," the husband says, "I can drop her off here on Mondays and Wednesdays. But on Fridays, you'll have to pick her up and bring her here yourself." The story is funny, but it's so sad. Here we have a woman who has been unable to get through to her husband. And here we have a husband who is a complete doofus. He is completely incapable of understanding his wife's needs, even when they're spelled out for him. I see many couples and relationships in which one person talks past the other, where neither one seems to really hear the other. It takes nothing to set off an argument or worse. How such relationships grow cold and angry can be explained many ways. But recently I read in Psychology Today that whereas for decades money and sex were the greatest issues over which marriages rose or fell, today the primary issue of contention is communication, our ability and our willingness to talk with one another in a respectful, caring way, to listen to the other, to pay attention to the other, and to really empathize with what the other one is trying to say to us. Perhaps it has been said it is because we spend so much time on social media, where when people call you an idiot, you write back and call them a stupid. We have no qualms about the things we say back and forth on Facebook, or the tweets we send to one another. So maybe now when somebody says something to you in person, face to face, it's not so hard for you to just give it back to them as well, or ignore them, as we sometimes have to do when we read things on Facebook. We lost patience with the person we once adored, and we feel ourselves in endless conflict with the person lying next to us. One of the best examples of this was in the hit series Everyone Loves Raymond. The show ended filming a dozen years ago, but it is still one of the more highly rated comedy shows on cable TV. Remember Raymond's father, Frank. He is so dismissive of his wife, Marie, that in one episode she complains, "I was nuts to go for you as a husband." To which he replies, "Don't go nuts, just go." Ugh. Their back and forth left many viewers laughing hysterically. But more than once, it left me, and apparently many other viewers, sad. How can a man talk about his wife like Frank did on Everybody Loves Raymond? But now and then, perhaps to keep Frank and Marie's constant conflict from getting out of control, there were episodes like the one called Frank's Tribute. After a massive fight in bed, during which Marie accuses Frank of not loving her and not having a single nice thing to say about her, Frank silently gets up and he leaves the bedroom. Things look bleak for a moment, but then Frank returns and he walks over to his wife and he tenderly starts wiping the facial cream off his wife's face. Marie says to him, "Frank, I need that. What are you?" To which Frank replies, "Shh. I love you better just the way you are." That scene and others like it have stayed with me over the years because it shows that when things start to get out of hand, when we say something we know we've crossed a line, when we realize that for all of our joking and hurtful behavior, we deep down truly do cherish that other person. Tenderly wiping the hurt off the other one's face with a gentle kiss or a kind word can bring an end to a conflict that might otherwise ruin something beautiful. There are, of course, other kinds of external events which can create conflict in our lives. In many of our families, it takes precious little to cause harsh words to be shouted between parents and their children, regardless their kids' ages. This has become especially common in today's world where so many of our grown children have moved back into their parents' homes to save money or because they've had a hard time earning enough. Humans are the only creatures, it seems, that allow their young to return to the cave. If you're a bear or a lion, at some point your parents throw you out, you're invited to stop by on holidays. But now it's not uncommon at all when I visit families that I see their kids living there after they've finished college, may have been gone for years. Many families thrive in such an environment. The adult child can make a meaningful difference in the house, and it's a win-win for everyone. But for other families, having a grown child always present can be stressful. Conflict can erupt when the parents feel their child has overstepped her boundaries, or the other way around. How can we manage situations that can lead to conflict and strife? One way is to open the lines of communication and to make sure everyone understands the ground rules. We may not think about this when we are dealing with our children or when we invite our parents to come and live with us. They are, after all, family, and we're happy to have them at first. But will anyone be shocked when I tell you that even with our family, we can have extreme conflict? External sources of conflict are everywhere in our lives, in our interactions with people with whom we work, even with the best friends that occasionally say hurtful things that can leave us stewing all night. How we deal with these emotional conflicts varies, but psychologists can offer helpful suggestions. One wrote that my wife and I are different. We see things differently. We're together not because we always agree, but because we have not allowed our differences to tear us apart. I have learned as I have grown older, this psychologist wrote, and have I become hopefully more mature to let more things go. It's like Rabbi Siegel told me when I first came to Beth Yeshurun years ago. When things got a little rough, he said, "Be like a duck. Let it slide off your back." Sometimes we have to be able to do that. Sometimes someone can say something to us that would really upset and anger us. We can let it grow and become something monstrous, keep us up for days. And sometimes we have to be strong enough and yes, mature enough to say, I'm going to let this one slide down my back. I care about that person too much to ruin my relationship or to give it all of my sleep one night. Another psychologist wrote, we need to learn how to rise above that which irritates and bothers us, to make adjustments, to be more forgiving, to try to be more amenable. Not all strife comes from the outside, though. Much of what keeps us up at night is what we might call internal strife. Conflicts that upset and worry us without anyone else really playing a role. These are conflicts that largely come from our insistence of reliving things that we've done that were not perfect, where we said something we regretted, said something foolish. We stood in front of somebody important and mumbled something rather than saying what we hoped to say originally. When we come to feel that we are able to handle every situation and we will never make mistakes, we open ourselves up to this kind of internal conflict when we relive those scenes. All of us have experienced and been part of what we might call cringeworthy moments in our lives. We replay scenes that we have lived. We replay things that we have said, things we should have thought of but didn't, inappropriate words that slipped out, embarrassing moments we couldn't get out of. So many times we tell ourselves we could have done better. Why did I do such a stupid thing? Why did I say that? Sometimes, too, we lie in bed thinking about our children and worrying about them. And we begin picking on ourselves about what we might have done differently when they were younger. Should we have sent her to that school? Should we have allowed her to have those kinds of friends when she was 12 and 15? Now she's 40. And we're still thinking. We're still second-guessing. If one of our kids is struggling, not able to hold a job, if one of our kids is not able to save money, did we teach them the right values? Where did we go wrong? We can lie awake for hours thinking what we might have done different. Maybe we should have been stricter. Maybe we should have been more lenient. Who knows what? We're up at night unable to sleep, not because we're angry or stressed. We're upset with ourselves, and we're second-guessing our lives, our behavior. We're in emotional conflict with ourselves because deep down we know we can't undo what once happened, or what actions we once took, or what decisions others made, even after they were under our tutelage. But in our heads, we continue to relive it over and over again. I'm reminded of the joke. It's a panel out of a cartoon, and there's a man lying in bed with his wife, and he's turned on his side, and he's saying to himself, now, when he said that, I should have said this. When he said this, I should have said that. His wife turns over and says, will you shut up already? Every night, what you should have said, what you should have done, what you should have this, what you should have that. Go to sleep already. Forget it. And the man turns over and says to himself, now, when she said that, I should have said this. When he said this, I should have said that. That's how so many of us are. We relive over and over again the conflicts in our lives when there really is no answer. It's too late. It's over. Move on. There's a word in the Talmud that might be instructive when we start feeling this way. It's called teku. You ever heard this word? Teku is a good word to learn. When the sages in the Talmud would have these deep discussions that sometimes could go on for pages, where this one said this and this one said that, and back and forth, and somebody else comes into the argument, finally it reaches a point where somebody just shouts out, teku, enough. We'll have to wait for Elijah the prophet to come back and solve this. We just can't. We need to move on. As in the Talmud, so in life. There are times when we too need to let ourselves off the hook, close our eyes and just say to ourselves, teku. I don't know how to explain some stupid thing I did. Teku. I don't know how to explain, even after all these years, something I once did that I wish I hadn't. Some oversight, some way I left somebody off the bar mitzvah list 30 years ago. How I could have said something that brought me into disharmony with somebody I once loved or liked. Teku. I don't know if my life, if my children, if my career might have turned out differently if I had only done something. If I hadn't messed up that interview. If I hadn't turned in that project proposal without looking at it a second time. Teku. Enough. Can't be solved. Can't be undone. Time to move on. Teku enables us to forgive ourselves and to resolve the internal conflicts that chip away at our morale and our happiness. It helps us unload our mistakes and fill that space in our brain with all our successes. In the same way, so many of us blame our past, our upbringings for our failures and mistakes. How about thinking at night instead about all the positive lessons we learned growing up? All the unexpected moments in our lives when we made such a difference to our children and to our partners and spouses. All the sweet things we said to people that put such big smiles on their faces. All the wonderful qualities that our children do possess because we were their mothers and we were their fathers. That is a healthy way to deal with internal conflicts that can cripple and diminish us. Teku. What's done is done. What's over is over. Don't keep looking back like Lot's wife did, who became so fixated on what had happened in her life that she froze in place, unable to move, unable to live the full life that was before her. No, my friends, we do not live in a world where everything goes right, where everyone says the right words, where we never make a mistake, where we never speak in the right tone, where everyone agrees with us, understands us, appreciates us. That kind of life doesn't exist. We all have crises. We all have times when we do not finish the way we planned when we started. We can either walk through life exasperated and frustrated, or we can strive to free ourselves of the emotional conflicts that hold us back. We can learn how good it feels to be honest with ourselves, that we all make mistakes, that we all do things. We are all in relationships that sometimes have moments that are uncertain and frustrating. My friends, as we start this new year, we are going to move into a year that offers all of us the promise of so many wonderful moments. We are going to be involved with important projects. We're going to be involved in exciting things in our families and our work. We're going to have the opportunity to watch our relationships grow and deepen. We're going to have the chance to see our children, our grandchildren, grow older and wiser and make us ever prouder. We're going to have to learn to accept that nothing they do or we do will ever be perfect. As the new year begins, let us set aside all the self-doubt. Let us stop replaying what was that has kept us up too long. And let us focus on the good, the positive, what will bring us happiness and joy, and those with whom we live and those we love as well. In so doing, this can be, and I pray it will be for each one of us here, truly the best year of our life, and it is in our hands and our hearts to make it so. Shana Tova to each of you as we begin 5778. Amen.